We're just going to have a roundtable discussion. How does that sound, guys? Before we get into that, though, I've told you guys every other week or so we release a new video that we've done. And we've got several videos. We've got about 8 of them, I think, in all, maybe 9. And this is really the second one that I want to release. And it kind of gives the patient stories, tells you a little bit about me and my brothers, what my brothers do. And then we have a very, very special show and a special video for you next week. So make sure and tune in for the first show in September. We've got all the brothers going to be here. And we're just going to take an hour and talk to all the brothers and go over a lot of the blooper clips that we did. Some with National Geographic, some, just regular photography. There's everything from me cutting down a tree and landing it on a greenhouse to catching snakes. So next week's going to be a fun, lighthearted kind of a show where you get an opportunity to meet me and my brothers a little bit better. I'm not going to get into it beyond that. Here's a very serious video that we'll go ahead and start with right now. And this is got some of Bob Kraus, one of our first, or actually our very first realm of caring patients. So enjoy this video and we'll be right back. Hey, we're the Stanley Brothers. I'd like to welcome you to our medical marijuana farm. This is where the magic happens. This is where we grow all of our medical marijuana for our cancer patients, MS patients, Parkinson's, arthritis, severe pain, on down the line. We're honored and privileged to be able to share this medicinal marijuana ranch with you and hope that you'll come and join us for the next few days and see what we live like.
I'm Joel. My role here on the mountain and at the grow is basically anything environment, from lighting to humidity controls to temperature controls, and down to drip systems, all the way down to watering. So I do a lot of work with the dials, controls, thermostats you see behind me. Cannabis requires very specific conditions, very specific humidity, very specific temperatures, and everything that I do is to ensure that all of those systems are working as efficiently as they can. So if parts need to be ordered or something new needs to be installed, I'm usually the guy that ends up doing that. So environment is everything, and I'm kind of the environment guy.
Welcome to the Stanley Brothers farm. Here we are. We have over 80 strains here. I'm going to take you through real basic rough down. We have indica, we have sativa, and we have every cross of each. Right here in the center we have Kushes. We have Bubba Kush here, we have Purple Kush here, Blackberry Kush, and so on and so forth. These are predominantly indica. Great for pain relief, great for arthritis, great for going to sleep, just put you out. Here is predominantly sativa. These will all kind of get you up and make you want to do stuff, where these will lay you out. These are hybrids. You can see the size difference too. Indica small, sativa larger, hybrids right in between because they're a mixture of each. This is our future strain. This is the non-psychoactive strain, super high CBD, no THC, so no tetrahydrocannabinol, no psychoactive, all euphoric. This is the one that is going to be the future of medicinal marijuana. We're very happy to grow it here. So you get the basic rundown. What we have to do though with every single bud is we have to trim them all. So I can give you a little brief rundown on that. Here we are. This is the Bruce Banner. Basically, you just come in and you take out all the plant matter. The plant matter contains all the chlorophyll, so basically that's all you're doing is getting rid of some of the basic toxins and some of the non-medicinal values of the plant. Voila. Stanley Brothers Farm, 80 plus strains. That's the rundown.
So here we're cloning. We're cloning the future strain, that strain that has the very high CBD and very low THC. Rather than going from seed, which takes a while, first the seed has to pop, which isn't a guarantee. And once it does, it's gonna take, I don't know, maybe a month for that seedling to get this size.
You don't know if it's gonna be male or female.
You don't know if it's gonna be male or female, and here we get the exact genetics from the plant it was cloned from. Instead of it being a, different genome, different phenotype, what you've got is the exact clone of its mother before it, and we know exactly what to expect.
Yeah, one of the big things with starting from seed is it takes a while for that genetic to develop the hormones to actually flower properly. And so the genetics are always going to be different from flowering. So when you find the mom that you want, this little clone is the exact same genetics as its mom, pretty much.
And there's actually genetic
flowered at any point.
There's actually genetic propagation too. They get better over time if they're well taken care of. Everyone thinks of genetic degradation, but we've found the opposite. The better we take care of our strains, the more we get to know them, the better they become. So this, the future, right now it came from being a part of a greater picture to being this. It has no roots. Now it's got to figure out that it's on its own. So what we're going to have to do is put it in an enclosed environment with lots of humidity. It'll absorb the humidity and it'll sustain itself that way until it starts to sprout its roots. Once that happens, then we'll really start to water the pot regularly.
It takes within, depending on if conditions are right and depending on the genetic, it takes anywhere from 3 days to a week before you really start to see roots. Some strains a little bit longer, some strains a little bit less, depending on, but conditions have everything to do with it.
I'm Josh Stanley.
And I'm Jesse Stanley.
And our roles in the realm of caring in the Stanley Brothers Medical Marijuana Grow operation, we're the ones out there seeing the patients, meeting with Dr. Shackelford, getting the test results back, making sure that they can report back to their oncologist, talking with Dr. Shackelford about their blood tests, about their milligram dosage, and just kind of explaining the whole realm of caring opportunity that they have.
We're sort of the voice for the realm. It's kind of nice to meet the patients and see them one-on-one and hear their stories. And a lot of these patients, they just want someone to talk to. And it's nice that we get to do that rather than be up here and grow, because, we're in Denver. It's a long way to get up here.
Yeah.
It's longer than we can drive every day. So it works out well that we're able to meet with the patients and set everything up.
And we find also that when we meet with a patient and they're recently diagnosed with cancer, how would you feel? You'd feel scared. You'd feel alone. And so that's kind of what Jesse and I are there for. Lend an ear, listen to them, let them know it's okay to be scared. And we have this alternative treatment program available to them that's free of charge. And that kind of helps set their minds at ease, I think, and for us to answer questions. Dr. Shackelford also works very, very close with us with the patients, and is so amazing at being able to ease their minds.
Absolutely. Well put.
Thanks.
Hi, my name is Bob Kraus. I'm a 63-year-old cancer patient here in Colorado. I was diagnosed about 5 years ago with chronic lymphocytic leukemia. It's one of the most common blood cancers in America. The diagnosis led me to a treatment program that was recommended, that was wait and watch from the oncologists here, and I ended up heard about cannabis as a potential treatment for cancer. And through the Stanley Brothers and the ability to get the oil from them, I've been able to knock out half of the cancer that's in my body. The lymphocyte count has gone down by 50% over several months. Without the treatment program, the cancer wouldn't have gone down, I gotta believe, because there was nothing else that could have been done. So the value of this product is, for me, it's taking care of the cancer that's in my body. I'm beating cancer every day. You have to have hope to beat cancer. And with the program that the Stanley Brothers have set up to allow me to get the medicine from them virtually at no cost for me, it really is £1 to £1.5 a month is the dosage that I'm on through the tier extract that is manufactured by the Stanley Brothers. And if they didn't do that for me, I don't have access to what I would need to be able to treat my cancer. My cancer cell count would continue to go up, I'm convinced. So with it, I have a chance to beat cancer, and I'm staying alive. I'm doing well with the cancer treatment on cannabis alone. I don't use any chemotherapy, no radiation, no pharmaceuticals, only the cannabis. Please help us in join the realm of caring.
Thank you all. We're back here, American Weed Realm Radio. we're going to have more of these videos coming out. We're introducing new patients kind of as they come, either every week or every other week. Today we had Bob Kraus on there, and I want to thank Bob for his heart, his journey, his support. Bob's been through a lot over the last couple of years, legally, with his trial and trying to pin the man for a felony for trying to grow his own plants to really make his oil to help his leukemia. Which
has actually responded amazingly to something. And since he's not doing anything else, I have to assume that he's responding to the concentrates that he's been using for the last year or so.
The last year and a half about. Yeah, Bob's been on for a year and a half. And let's kind of go into this. Let's talk about this for a minute, because we have realm patients that, cancer patients, for example. And again, I'm not going to use names, and I don't use names unless I have permission to do so. But one of our other realm patients been on the oil for about 8 months, and it's been a real roller coaster ride for this woman, because she'll experience a lot of success, and then she'll experience a little bit of a drawback, And I think it's the same with any kind of prescription medication. You say, oh gosh, doctor, is there anything else I can be taking for this? I'm kind of feeling like I'm in a rut. Bob stuck with it for a year and a half. He's had his ups and downs, but his ups have far outweighed his downs.
And it's really quite remarkable to see the change in cell counts from his initial diagnosis, which was 3 years ago or so, 3 or 4 years ago. I'm not certain exactly when. I'd have to look back at the records I have. But Bob's been very public about his disease and his treatments, and I'm actually surprised at how effectively whatever he's been doing has worked. Because we don't have any controls, and because it's a one-off, we don't know what's actually going on here. It could just be that Bob's leukemia has burned itself out. I frankly don't know, but I think it's extraordinarily interesting that he has gone from and this is not anything that I'm not revealing any confidences here, but he's gone from a total white blood cell count of nearly 30,000 to half that, under half that, and as far as I know, hasn't been doing anything else. So I think it says yet again with tremendous emphasis that we need to be looking at this in a great deal more organized a fashion, and that there is potentially tremendous benefit to be gained from cannabis as a treatment. We honestly don't know much about this, but it's absolutely mind-boggling to see how he's responded.
It is, Bob, and many other patients in the realm, and I think that's what's so interesting about it is the results that we're seeing. And I guess, Doc, what I would have to say is, Bob, this is really the only thing that he's taking to counteract his leukemia. We have another patient, and that, by the way, that's just a disclaimer. We do not tell these patients this is the only thing you need. We tell them to follow what their oncologist says. And many times the patients say, I want to go the 100% natural route. That's their prerogative, okay? So I want to put that out as a disclaimer here. At the Realm of Caring, we don't say, hey, this is going to cure you. We have no idea. We just know that we're going to make this oil, provide it to you at an affordable, if not a free cost. But we make no claims here. And I think, Doc, that's something important to I say it every week, but I think it's really important that we continue to say that, because I'm not a doctor, you are a doctor, and we still don't know. That's why we need a more organized method of tracked studies.
No question. And I think the other side of that is that people do make up their own minds about treatment, but I think they should do so always from a position of really knowing what the options are. And those options must, in my opinion, include all traditional standard accepted medical treatments, be they surgical or chemotherapy or radiation, whatever the particular, I won't say approved, because these are sometimes, most of these particular treatments have been proven in standard scientific approaches, or they wouldn't be useful, and they would not be approved for use by FDA in this country. And there's a huge controversy about that. I mean, does FDA approval really mean anything? And I think it does. I think, though, that people should have the freedom to make their own choices, to use standard pharmaceutical or medical treatments if they elect to do so, or to not treat their illnesses at all. But they should do so, as I said, from a position of knowledge and a position of understanding all of the different upsides and downsides of any particular treatment that they choose to use. So that's a big caveat, and I don't think anyone should make claims about anything. We are observing what happens when people do whatever they do, and that's really the I guess the upshot. I never encourage anyone to avoid traditional treatments at all. If they elect to do so, it's something that they have done on their own, and I think that's an important caveat.
And everyone has to manage their own medicine, whether it's pharmaceuticals or cannabis. I mean, you pretty much have to do research on your own, and you have to educate yourself, period. You can't put all of your, eggs in one basket, if you will. So I think it is a matter of, doing what listening to your doctor, but also listening to or educating yourself on everything.
Well, information is difficult to come by sometimes.
Yeah.
Certainly, it's easier to get information on traditional pharmaceutical or medical treatments, surgical or radiation therapy, whatever it is. Increasingly, though, information is available on other treatment options as well. And I personally think that we have an obligation to make sure that people know what's available, but also not to go beyond what we really do know, which is that cannabis can be helpful for symptom control. Beyond that, I think all bets really are off because we don't have that information.
Can I ask you a quick question, though, real quick? Is how come doctors, not all doctors, but how come doctors are so afraid of cannabis?
Well, I don't know if doctors are afraid of cannabis. I think that doctors don't understand it or know very much about it. And that's not uncommon. We are taught to practice an evidence-based form of medicine. That means what are the treatments that are diagnostic testing or treatments that are supported by research and by evidence that basically takes it out of the realm of conjecture or possibility and puts it into the realm of probability. Now, there's an axiom in clinical research that basically says you can't apply the results of a study of a large population of people to any particular individual. That is, if this particular treatment worked in 92% of 1,000 people, 920 of them, there are still 80 people it didn't work in. So you can't say, oh, this will work, because we don't know that. But the evidence is that in a large percentage of people, this has the probability of being effective for that particular condition. That's evidence-based medicine. There's not a lot of evidence on cannabis, and I think, there is a growing body of research evidence that it can be effective in all the different things we've talked about. But doctors are conservative, and I think that's a good thing. We like to do things that are supported by objective data, right. And yet sometimes you have to look, and I talk about this a lot, but you have to look at the risk-benefit ratio. What are the risks of a given treatment? What are the potential benefits of that treatment? And how can the benefits or the risks apply to this particular individual? So if there's if you try, say, a treatment for nausea, chemotherapy-associated nausea, and it's not effective, what are your fallbacks? Well, you need to find something that's safe and effective, and cannabis is safe and effective in that setting for most people. There's a history in medicine of sometimes the conservatism, and I'm not using that in any derogatory way, but sometimes being conservative has its drawbacks. In the early 1800s, Ignaz Semmelweis suggested that doctors wash their hands before they move from one patient to the other, and he was pilloried and driven out of medicine at the very notion that washing hands might be a good idea.
Wow.
The other example of that is anesthesia. When ether was introduced, surgeons were almost universally opposed to it because it meant that slower, less proficient surgeons would be doing operations, and that's not good. If you with anesthesia, you got to get the leg off quickly and tie off those bleeding arteries and get all that stuff done very quickly, because first, it's an extraordinarily painful thing to do, and you have to be a good surgeon. Well, anesthesia just makes it possible for not such proficient surgeons to operate on people. So the surgeons were conservative about that. I think that we are seeing something similar with cannabis, not on quite as dramatic a scale as hand washing or anesthesia, but doctors are reserving judgment until there is more evidence, and I can't fault them necessarily on that. We need more research.
We do. I just wish we were allowed to do it.
It would be a good idea.
I mean, that would make all the difference in the world, because all of us everyone's willing to do it. I mean, we're not hiding anything. We're all willing to do those studies that we have to do.
Well, Colorado is at the forefront, okay? And I think we have to remember that Colorado let's just talk about passing 2 bills, okay? I know somewhat non-popular amongst the legalization crowds, which is okay. I get it. But at least we were able to pass a statewide bill and to define into statute what the voters voted for in the year 2000. And what we did last year was what they said would never be done, Doctor. And I think you remember when we were in this fight. You and I are the ones that wrote the research and development portion of the bill. And it was a very small portion of that bill because we wanted to keep that direct and focus that would clearly defined statute and the legislative intent. We had to stay within some parameters, but we did write the research development portion of the bill. And the reason that we're sitting here today in this studio and we have a show, and a big reason that we're working on more TV things and we're really pushing the realm and the observational research studies, is because Colorado does allow for the research and development portion. With research and development, what would you have to fall on if you didn't take advantage of it and do observational research studies on these patients, or not studies on them, but studies as to the efficacy of the medical marijuana that they're taking? And so I think we're in a very unique playground in Colorado, because there's certain people in this room, for example, that have taken this very, very seriously, have taken this as to the levels of another alternative form of medication, and not simply a mask or a cover for the legalization of the plant. And that's why I'm excited to work with you. We always have been excited the last 3 years to work with you and Jen, now coming on board and working with us and helping with the patients in the realm. You know, what we're seeing and what the doc just talked about a second ago, think about this for a minute. Everybody is starting to get an idea that cannabis can help these symptoms like nausea, people that are going through chemotherapy, for example. But what does that do? What is nausea? What is nausea medication? It's typically a mask, right? It's something that can help quell a particular symptom. We're getting into the realm now of other types of treatment that can be preventative. And I say that because I look at the kids, for example, in the non-psychoactive portion of the plant, and using the CBD and having their epilepsy quelled, 80 to 90% in many cases. You look at people like Bob and his leukemia. We look at a patient that was sent, home and was given 4 weeks 3 months ago and has gone from a stage 4 to a stage 2, and this is the only thing she's using. We don't know, but we know there's something there. And this is the new horizon. This is the new medical marijuana, where arthritics can, take the cream topically, non-psychoactive, and say this is better. And I've had many, mind you, say this is better than any pill that my doctor's given me for my arthritis. So I think let's talk about that for a minute. Let's talk about this new horizon of what we truly don't know, but we know there's something to this. And folks, I want you to remember this out there, because as we talk about observational research studies, that's precisely what these are. These are not double-blind placebo that we're not regulated by the FDA or AMA or DEA in that sense. So, but I would argue, okay, and we may not agree on this, Doc, but I would argue that when you take a 5-year-old and you give them a non-psychoactive portion of this plant, that 5-year-old is not cognizant enough to know whether or not they're taking a sugar pill or not. Therefore, moves it a little more into that realm of the double-blind placebo, as far as the way that I see this, and I'm watching these kids respond.
Well, I think what it does actually is in that situation where there's a these particular individuals have gone down the road of conventional pharmaceutical therapy, and it worked as expected in that situation for a while, and then they didn't work, and they went on to run essentially the gamut of all the anti-epileptics. Well, what we're really doing is not so much it's certainly not a controlled trial, because there's varying dosing and variable cannabinoid profiles of what they're receiving, but it is in a sense a comparison of traditional standard pharmacological treatment and the CBD or cannabis extract. So it's not so much into the realm of the controlled study. Rather, it is still observational, but it's comparing the previous effect, the previously observed effects of the pharmaceuticals with this last-ditch ultima ratio. That is the last possible thing that's left for them to try. So, and a lot of people end up there. I've made that comment before about pain, for example, and the pejorative notion that 90% of people on the Colorado Medical Marijuana Registry are there because of severe pain, but they're there because everything else has failed, essentially, and now it's the last-ditch effort. I think we're seeing the same thing and that, in a sense, is a comparative study. It's looking at cannabis compared to all the other stuff they tried before. So we're really, with these children, looking at the effect or the failure of the pharmaceutical treatment compared with the relative success of this. Though I think it was an unanticipated success. I think it was, again, that last ditch.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
I wasn't prepared for it. I wasn't prepared, and a very special guest we're going to have on here after the break in a few minutes, Paige Figge, Charlotte's mother, who was on our actual first show, American Weed Realm Radio. We're going to call her and talk to her and check in with how Charlotte's doing. I'm sure it was a shock for Paige, when she said...
Everyone in that group.
Yeah.
I mean, every day. Yeah.
And we're seeing kids now with all different types of syndromes that their parents are coming and saying, hey, wait a second, what about this? What about this? And we've already seen Hughes syndrome in a child, a 9-year-old child in southern Colorado, and the effects have been staggering for him thus far. And so, when we talk about Dravet, we're not just talking about Dravet. This was very, very unexpected.
No question. I think if you look at the economics of seizure disorders, an interesting paper published in 2000 by researchers at University of Texas looked at the costs and a variety of different parameters associated with seizure disorders in the United States in 1995. And the cost at that time to the economy of the 3% of people in the country who have a seizure disorder and the 1% who have an uncontrolled or only partially controlled seizure disorder were astounding. There were $12.5 billion for seizure disorders in 1995, and among adults with uncontrolled or only partially controlled seizure disorders, about a $4 billion cost. And that's 1995. So we're looking at 18 years ago almost, 17 years. Those costs have probably tripled. So we're talking now about $37 billion a year in costs from seizures, and that are at least somewhat controlled, and somewhere in the neighborhood of $12 billion for uncontrolled or partially controlled seizures. So this is not just an academic exercise that we're discussing. It's really this has real ramifications and implications for people with seizure disorders, not only here, but of course around the world.
And, just talking with one of our former guests, Spencer Nottingham, a 26-year-old seizure patient here in Colorado, the reduction that he's seen has been astronomical. And he went through the gamut. And he said the gamut of pharmaceutical medication, that as it were. And he tried them all. He said not only did they make him sick sometimes, but they made him worse off sometimes. So he found this, and again, I think we have to believe him. And now that he's getting on, he's going to start trying the new non-psychoactive. And I think that's what more people are really excited about, because it took them such a long time to get over the shock of that euphoric effect that some of the oil can provide. Now he's, him and we've got a line of about 25 other adults waiting in line to do the observational research with the non-psychoactive.
And I think it's important not to denigrate or condemn pharmaceuticals. They've made life around the world significantly better for millions and millions of people. But they, as all treatments, they have their shortcomings, and that nothing works for everybody. So if we find something that is effective, we need to be using it. And this is not without precedent. Vincristine and vinblastine are extracts of, and these are chemotherapy drugs used to treat cancers. They are extracts of they're vinca alkaloids, they're called, and they're extracts of a particular type of orchid. I think it's an orchid. I may be wrong about that, but as I recall, it's an orchid. So these are plant-derived treatments that have found an important place in mainstream medicine, if you will. So this is not something that's necessarily new. What's new about it is, as you've pointed out, that it comes from this plant that certainly in recent history has been bedeviled, relegated to creating homicidal maniacs, which we know is not true. And yet that is somehow the springboard from which much of this opposition to cannabis comes. It's basically propaganda and untruth or half-truths. So the psychoactive effect is something that may be beneficial. We don't know. I think that the majority of people don't want it, don't like it. It interferes with their productivity, and we need alternatives to that. But THC clearly plays a role. And I read a paper by Dr. Meshullam from 1977 today, and in it he says specifically that the psychoactivity limits the our ability to use THC itself or in combination with other cannabinoids or other substances as a treatment. So we do need to be advancing down the road of what else can we achieve with non-psychoactive cannabinoids. It's a brilliant and highly, absolutely essential path to follow here.
Absolutely. Completely agree. THC does play a role. But, like you said, I agree. Pharmaceuticals play a role, too. I mean, I like technology. I like advancement. I'm glad I'm not, using pine cones to wipe my butt.
Whoa.
I would never consider that.
Yeah. Wow, Josh.
No, you know what? People come to me all the time, and they're like, "Oh, you don't like pharmaceuticals," and I can't believe this. And I said, "No, I love technology. I love advancement. That's one of the things I throw back to him, I mean, we're constantly advancing and getting better and better, and I'm all for it. But one thing I'm not all for,
we're also sicker.
We are sicker, and that's what
there's more people as well, but we are sicker. I think
as a society we are, but we're using single compound medication largely for the FDA approval process. I'm not necessarily all for.
Yeah, that's true. That's an important point. And this is something that kind of behind the scenes is being discussed among statisticians and people who do research into, all manner of clinical study. The double-blinded, placebo-controlled, isolated variable trial is not necessarily the be and end all. We've set it up as a gold standard in a way, but in point of fact, it doesn't necessarily get to the totality of a particular response to anything. And when you're trying to isolate your variables, which is what you have to do in that kind of approach, you may be throwing out the baby with the bathwater. And I think that's a very important point that we don't really necessarily have to simply isolate and look at THC or CBD or take your pick, terpenes or whatever it is, vincristine, vinblastine. There's an interaction. I think that's what we see with cannabis. When these 108 or some odd different compounds produce an observable effect, it probably isn't simply because THC turned on that receptor. It's probably because THC was available and that receptor was activated by a terpene which one we don't know, and potentially activation of that other receptor by the terpene, and a cannabinoid, one of the CB2 receptors allows the CB1 receptor, or some heretofore as yet undiscovered receptor, to be activated as well. So this is not simple. And a simple, isolated, variable approach to a study probably isn't going to get the complexities, and that's the problem.
Well, and I'm not a doctor, so I'm going to take the word probably out of that and say it doesn't. Because, you know, what I think we've done too as a society, I think we've gone to, we deem the word, and I'm going to get a little philosophical, we deem the word convenience to be right.
Oh, yeah.
We don't live with the consequences of our actions, when in reality, if I take my shoe off and I kick this wall, my toe's going to swell. I have to deal with the consequences. We as a society cut corners, especially the United States, and in the fact that we don't look at and try to go after the cause or the cure, the root cause of our illness.
How about prevention?
We get so caught up with symptoms, and so we fire away at all of these symptoms, and then we have literally thousands of these medications. You know, like my funniest one I've ever seen, Abilify. Abilify, you know, and at the end, you know, may cause premature death, anal bleeding, you know, all the it's no big deal.
Yeah, but we're all good.
You know,
as long as it
makes me smile, you know, and I'd say, wait a second, instead of taking Abilify, how about there's a treadmill?
Right.
Or, you know, get your ass outside and get some exercise.
Thank you.
But we tend to take the shortcut, and I think that's very, very unfortunate. And now that we've found, 10,000 years ago, I've been using this plant. If you look at a timeline like this, okay, only up till this point right here has it been demonized. All the rest of the time it's been used.
Yeah.
And so now it's coming into the public stream, public light, and it's the purpose of this show to really bring to light what we believe it can do medically. And that's why you're here, Doc.
Yeah, and let's talk a sec about prevention. I think that's an important note. The Hampson study, this is the one that was published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, I think in 1998. An NIH study, extremely well done, says in its conclusion essentially that cannabidiol and THC may be so protective of the central nervous system that they could prevent the development of Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and HIV-related dementia. That's extremely interesting. We're looking at the word prevent.
Right.
Now, that's not been investigated, to my understanding. I think that particular patent, 6630507, for those of you who want to go to to the U.S. Trademark and Patent Office website, go to search by patent number and read that. It's an extremely interesting document, and it's owned by the Department of Health and Human Services in Washington, and they just recently licensed that patent to a company in the Midwest someplace for further development. I think they're looking at hepatic encephalopathy, which is an odd thing to look at. It's the kind of mental problems that occur when someone is in frank and extreme liver failure. But the thing that's really important about this is that they concluded that these substances can protect the central nervous system from mechanical trauma, and so you fall, in a car accident, you have a motorcycle accident, you hit your head, or damage to the brain or the central nervous system from strokes. Now, I have a number of patients who were using cannabis for other reasons. I don't remember what exactly, who had strokes in the past year. When I saw them and reevaluated them, they did not have any deficits that I could see. Now, that doesn't mean that people who use cannabis for other reasons, pain, nausea, whatever it is, and have a stroke are going to come out of it unscathed. What it means is that there's something there that says this substance, whatever it is, these polypharmacy, all these 100 and whatever different compounds, acting together in those individuals, and there aren't many, 4 probably, may have acted together to limit the damage from the stroke. And there is evidence that rehabilitation after a stroke is facilitated by the use of cannabis, even if it wasn't used prior to the stroke. So this is a completely new frontier. I don't think anyone has thought about the notion that cannabinoids taken in from outside the body in the form of something from the plant might protect someone against the horrific consequences of a major stroke. We need to be investigating that.
Yes, we do.
How about let's stay on prevention for a minute. How about the positives that we've seen with even topicals as preventatives for skin cancer?
Wow, that's an area that I don't know about prevention for skin cancer. I know that there is some really good evidence that I've seen personally that topicals can have an effect on cancers that are already present. I think that needs to be investigated as well. But preventives, who knows? I think we should look at that.
Well, our country doesn't look at everything is not looked at until it's broken. There's no health care. I mean, we're not. Yeah, it's there's nothing with prevention. I can't get a massage. I can't do anything that's going to prevent me from getting hurt or getting sick because my insurance does not see that. It's ridiculous.
Well,
and
what are the consequences?
That's
Not to
right,
interrupt you,
Jen.
Jim,
No, it's fine.
But when you pay, as United Healthcare did in 2006, when you pay an executive a bonus of $1.72 billion with a B
Oh,
dollars,
God.
Oh, I'm going to
you cannot provide health care to the people who pay those premiums, and that is an obscene bonus. And it is exactly what happened. And he was caught. The SEC fined him, I think, $13 million for the error in filing his bonus. And it was stock options and a bunch of other stuff, but it totaled $1.72 billion, $1,720 million. And I keep coming back to this. More babies die in the United States than die in Cuba. Our infant mortality rate
Is that right?
Wow, I didn't know that either.
Oh, yeah, it's a horrific statistic. Cuba, we're not better
they
off
get
in life
free.
expectancy than the Cubans, and more babies die here than there. And that has to do with access to health care. It has to do with all those things you mentioned, preventative interventions. What is it that, I mean, just the notion that statistically, again, I don't know how this came about, but that a woman 40 or under should not have a mammogram because they're not going to catch a cancer has been, in my experience anyway, proven wrong in, I don't know, scores of different instances. Now, maybe it saves the insurance industry money.
No, that's exactly what it
exactly
does.
what
That's
we
exactly
just.
what it does.
You know, my wife and I were just talking about this, and our insurance will not cover her for a mammogram fully. A full, you know, the I don't know what you call them, not just the self test. I give her a self test every night.
Good for you.
Yeah, just to be sure, you know.
Well, but let me
You
tell
never
you,
be
that's
too
not a bad
safe.
idea, actually, because you can find things that weren't
Sure.
there a week ago.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's very important.
Yeah,
I
and
know
that's
that-
why
I
that's
know
why I
you're-
check her every night.
No, they put you in a vice.
Yeah.
They do. They put you in a vice, basically.
Is that
and
what it is?
Squish it down and go, okay, tell me when I can't go anymore. And you're literally, and you want to go as far as you can, but it hurts. I just had another one, and yeah, something in the film looked like a shadow or something, so they brought me back in. They're like, oh, well, we just didn't take a proper angle or something, and then I had to pay for that. And so I called them and I was like, absolutely not. It's not my fault. I can't pay for this. So they actually took care of it. Whoops. But I mean, it's horrible, and especially for women. I mean, we go in and we have to have insurance because we have to go in once a year for our yearly and everything else. But as far as testing, I got a couple of tests that I thought were preventative, like I have low zinc, and it's cost me an arm and a leg just for these extra amino acid tests, which is ridiculous.
Yeah.
I mean, and I pay
know,
almost
Jen.
$200 a month.
Jen, I
for
pay
nothing.
$800 a month for
Oh
the
my
both
God,
of us.
for you and your
You
wife?
want to know why? Because I had a minor back surgery
Oh,
when I
right.
fell out of the sky, and you know, and so now, but it, you know, I got a little scar, and it was 5 year ago. And they denied us and denied us and denied. Finally, we found some, okay, you know, you can have this, but it's going to be this much money. And I said, wait a second, if you're not going to cover my pre-existing, why is my premium go all the way up?
Right.
They're not even going to cover if something happens to my back again. Can you believe
So,
this?
are they covering your massage or your yoga
No,
or something
absolutely
like that
not.
to prevent further problems with your back? That's what I'm talking about.
No, absolutely not. They don't cover that, and again, they don't cover, you know, my wife's, proper women's, female hygiene treatment. And thank you for telling me that, that was painful. I'll stop squeezing her so hard.
No, literally, it's horrible.
Yeah.
I don't know how women with fake breasts do it. Seriously, I don't know how that doesn't pop.
Well, that's another.
Well,
that's another
just
show.
engineering, I think that's.
Well, that's some amazing engineering. I can tell you that right now.
You know, the healthcare in this country truly is a disaster, I think. And as I've said many times previously, when anybody who is campaigning for office and tells you we have the best healthcare in the world,
Oh my!
Is either ignorant and you don't want them in office anyway, or lying and you don't want them in office anyway either. So
I think that's both of our candidates.
I've been
guys,
sorely disappointed with some of the things.
That's the root of our. Okay, the problem, the 1.2 billion, whatever it is, 1.7 billion. You know, that's one of the problems. The other problem is, you know what? It's our legislative system. Clearly. It's fouled.
Oh, yeah.
Two-party system. You get a junior congressman going in, you know, making $40,000, $50,000 to $70,000 a year.
Actually, they make a lot more than that.
No, not the juniors, not district. District.
Oh, not U.S. Congressman.
U.S. Congressman about 180.
Oh, you're talking about local or state?
Okay, let's use a U.S. Congressman. I'm talking about local district. But if you use a U.S. Congressman, for example, let's say, okay, $180,000 a year, and they serve 5 terms, and they come out, and literally they're worth $15 to $25 million. You don't live in a democracy, folks. And I get it. People say, well, you know, Josh, you hired lobbyists to get this done as well.
Because we have to.
I hired lobbyists because I have to play this game, but I'm not cornering the healthcare model and making people sick in Colorado just because I want to give the executive of an insurance company $1.7 billion and then have who allows that to happen? Our representatives.
How? How did that? How is this happening?
Because of
right
our
now?
system, special interest groups, political action committees. This isn't conspiracy theory things, folks. This is real. This is what happens. You know, if we could outlaw any special interest from going and lobbying on Capitol Hill, for example, especially for special interests like this, and we could monitor, if you were going to be a public official, then guess what? You're a public official. Everything about you is public, including your phone records. And if you're caught talking to these special interests, then I tell you what, it's skip go. You've lost your status as a representative because you're not representing the people. You're representing a minority, being a corporation. And now that the Supreme Court has passed that a corporation is the same as an individual without a limit to what you can give, and you know, I don't necessarily agree that that's wrong, logically or ethically, but ethically it's wrong. Logically, it's correct, and I think that their decision, they didn't have a choice in it. But now you have super PACs. You have, how many billions is it that this election campaign is run on now? Is it 30 billion right now? Because there's no limit. When that happened in this country, I started to check plane tickets to Mexico or wherever the hell else it is we had to go, because your voice essentially is over.
Well, Trent Lott, and I this may not be an exact quote. I read this somewhere a number of years ago, and a constituent of his approached him. I think it was a constituent, and said he'd like to speak with him. So Trent Lott was the Republican majority leader in the Senate from Mississippi, and he said, "Son, this is how it works. If you got $100,000 to donate to my campaign, I'll spend an hour with you. If you got $50,000, I'll spend a half hour. You got $25,000, I'll spend 15 minutes. You ain't got nothing. I ain't got time." It's just how it works.
That's right. You got that right, Trent.
So the you know, in a moment of rare candor, and I think that it is a function largely of campaign contributions and essentially buying favor. Not many other countries in the world allow that. Just like New Zealand is the only other country that allows pharmaceutical companies to advertise on television. Everybody else thinks it's the province of the physician to determine what's appropriate for that patient, rather than the drug company advertiser.
And asking about it. Ask your doctor.
And so there are some major problems. And I've asked people in different countries, Canada to Germany to Britain to New Zealand and China, about what do they think about the notion that a company could make a campaign contribution and thereby get some sort of special favor, and they're appalled, aghast, disturbed that that's how our system really functions. So we, in a sense, that's, you know, if you look at the totality of, like, cannabis as an example, and our inability to do research on it, you have to follow the money trail. And I think it's buried rather deeply, but who would benefit from say, being able to study cannabis? Well, people would. Do people matter? Probably not. The people who would suffer? Well, it's most interesting. If you look, and I was asked this question at a press conference in Connecticut. I was not expecting this question. It was a good question. What do the insurance companies think about this medical marijuana legislation? And I got to, I was thinking, how do I answer this? Well, it turns out that insurance companies actually, at least in Connecticut, probably were not really opposed to it. If you look at the costs of pharmaceuticals that cannabis could be used to either supplement, where so you're using fewer or lower amounts of the pharmaceutical, or get rid of totally, the insurance company's not paying for those pharmaceuticals. So that makes sense from their bottom line perspective. Who gets hurt? The pharmaceutical companies. Because if you decrease the amount of Vicodin that people take, and I think I've said this before.
And it would.
Of course it does.
Yeah.
The United States consumes 98% of the world's production of hydrocodone.
Hold on just a second.
Say
Doc,
that again?
I want you to back that up
Yeah.
and say that one more time.
I read a statistical analysis that recently that said the United States consumes 98% of the Vicodin produced in the world. We also kill 40,000 people a year from unintentional drug overdoses from narcotics. So,
Well, and people think, oh my God, people are abusing cannabis. Huh,
right. Well,
that's
abuse
interesting.
Of Vicodin or hydrocodone or any narcotic can lead to death, and frequently does, in 40,000 cases in 2009, and probably many, many more than that in the 3 years since. It's been
How many is
exponentially.
cannabis recorded
None,
overdoses?
as you know.
Yeah, none. And how many non-threatening
None.
side effects? Maybe like 4.
Well, we can enumerate them. but-
Yeah, well, I mean, one of the
remember.
industries that's very much for legalization is the Funyuns Corporation and Doritos.
What about them?
They would love to see legalization.
Good.
There'd be a run on Funyuns. I mean, if we're talking
I've
about
never had a Funyun. Forgive me, I don't even know what it is.
well, it's a
pretty
Dorito,
crazy.
it's a chip,
Okay.
or what? It's
It's an onion ring.
yeah. When we
chip.
talk about the side effects of this, the side effects in many cases, even the side effects, appetite stimulation, that's what many of these chemo patients
What
are
you need
taking
it
it
for.
for.
Sleepiness.
No question.
Yeah, sleepy, you need to go get some sleep. Yeah, giggly. I mean, if that's a side effect,
Terrible.
heaven forbid, may cause. Could you imagine? Okay, you have a
May cause
cannabis
your kids to
commercial.
laugh.
I want to do the first cannabis commercial. Warning: may cause increased Funyun and Dorito abuse. May cause sleepiness and excessive giggling. Ooh, Lord, stay away
Terrible.
from that. Yeah.
Horrible.
I mean,
I did
the safety ratio of cannabis, and I did know the answer to that, of course, but this is, we're trying to, and we're getting such a great following worldwide, so all you in other countries, I want to thank you also for tuning
Ja,
in.
wenn Sie mal noch einmal zuhören möchten, wir freuen uns gerne. Wir können das natürlich auch auf Deutsch hervortragen, wenn Sie mal in Deutschland uns zuhören.
Wow.
A shout out
You
to
are
Germany.
amazing.
I did. I said essentially, and if you're listening in Germany, we can do this in German too, if you'd like.
That's right.
Yay.
Well, do you have a mouse in your pocket?
The Dr. Shackelford puppet. You've never seen
Yeah.
There's not
but
one of those out there.
But the safety ratio of cannabis is 1 to 10,000, meaning you could sit in here with a knife and a fork and bales of medical or medicinal cannabis or cannabis, and you couldn't consume enough to potentially kill yourself. You may feel like you want to die, and for those of you that would like a laugh, I got to say this. You need to go to YouTube and Google "Cop Eats Pot Brownie." If you haven't seen it yet,
Haven't seen it.
we're gonna put it on the show next week. So Chris, can you make a note of that? It will laugh until you cry. That's why I say you may feel like you think you're dying, but you're not.
Right.
Yeah, you will. You need to meet a babysitter, but that's about it.
But that's it. You'll be fine.
That's it.
Well, I think the thing that's important here, and I don't want to be just really too blanket, but we don't know if there are really any untoward or any problems with cannabis. I mean, I think there are some indications, I've mentioned this before, that it may interfere with frontal lobe development in adolescence. There may be other things that we don't know about. So, but the history of cannabis use has been, to my knowledge, universally and completely benign for at least 5,000 years of recorded history, and certainly many more thousands of years of human use. So unlike the opium poppy, which has medicinal benefits as well, cannabis, to my knowledge, has never killed anyone. It does have side effects. It potentially could have implications or some sort of negative impact on developing brains. We don't know this stuff. There is evidence that suggests that could be the case. The problem with research, and people talk about research all the time, research isn't necessarily research. Clinical studies are not necessarily good. Just because somebody published it in a journal doesn't mean it's worth the paper it's printed on. And that's true for schizophrenia research. To the papers I've read, there's an association rather than a causal relationship between people who later develop schizophrenia and people who have used marijuana. The probability, as I read the papers, is that people self-medicate. They know something's wrong, even though it's not yet clinically apparent, and they'll use all sorts of things, including alcohol and tobacco, cannabis, heroin, take your pick. It's not been well established, to my mind, the way I analyze research, that cannabis has any causal effects. I still think that so the safety record is really, really, really good. I just hate to be quite so global. Remember, I'm also a physician, and we use the words, like you said, probably, we hedge. Lawyers don't like us when we testify because they want us to make absolute statements, and we don't. That's because we don't necessarily always
because you'll
know.
be sued, because we're in America, and that's what you do, is you sue people.
That's correct.
Especially doctors.
But real quick, I just want people to educate themselves, and that's it. I mean, if this plant is wonderful and you want to try it, let's just get the facts on it first before we open our mouth about anything. And of course, maybe it does, hinder development or whatever, but probably Ritalin and Adderall and all these other things that it's okay to give kids, and then people freak out about cannabis. And I'm like, really, you're giving your kid McDonald's every day? It is astounding to me. So your kid's going to be, 600 pounds, on their way to be 600 pounds, because you don't get to be 600 pounds as an adult by not being an obese child. So I just want us to have a different and open mindset to, wow, just because a doctor prescribes it doesn't mean that it's okay. And I remember when I was little, of course, they ADH, whatever. And I was just a hyper kid, and mom, you need to give her Ritalin. And mom said I refused to take it. I hated it. I just didn't want to be on it. And how about, like Josh said, let's go outside. Like, instead of sitting in front of a computer all day, like all of that plays a part in our mental state, our disease state. We're sedentary. Nobody exercises. Things come out. Oh, weight loss drugs. I don't care what it is. You have to exercise and eat well.
That's right.
Period.
That's right. Our society is gimme, and give it to me now.
Yep.
And
Easy.
that's not the way the world works. It never
anything.
has been. You can supplement yourself from hell to breakfast. And all of these hydroxy cuts and this and that, and you show these, shows these women. You know what these women did? They may have taken that pill, that may be, and it's in a sense it's just ephedrine, but they may have taken that pill. But they also had a personal trainer, and they got on a treadmill, and they got on a diet. They started eating healthy, and they started to go through better life habits. Things don't just happen like that, folks. It doesn't work that way. And I'm glad that we're talking a little bit. Let's bring this up for a few minutes. And we haven't taken a commercial break just because I'm having a lot of fun here. Is that okay with you guys? Are you okay with it? Chris, are we okay with that?
That's fine.
All right.
Forget your phone call.
No. We're calling Paige here in just a minute. We can't wait to talk to Paige. She's one of my favorite people. And we're going to hear all about how little Charlotte's doing. And I mean, okay. I wish we could play this video. Maybe I'll work on it on your computer while they talk to Paige, because our folks. I want. Oh, I know. I want to talk to Paige, but you got to see this video. It's Paige in Charlotte. I'm going to pull it up. I'll find it while we're doing this, and maybe I can do it on the break. But I want to bring this up really quick here. The topic of children and the use of CBD. There's been a lot of questions, and I've had 2 people from the pediatric group send me instant messages and ask that I do not mention their names, and they have not been active on the site as far as giving information, but they've messaged me personally, and the reason they haven't is a couple of these one of them lives in a nation, not our country, a nation that does not allow for medicinal cannabis. It's not necessarily as criminalized as it is in the United States, where we like to build private prisons for the slave trade, but it is a country that does frowns upon it. And she has been giving her child that has epilepsy this medicine for some time. They have not had the luxury of having you, Gennifer, and CannLabs to ratio things. Okay, they don't have the luxury of a Dr. Shackelford to bounce things off to in a place that's making this for them, like us. And so, as I read this, one of the things that she brought up, she said, my kid is, and I'm not supposed to say boy or girl. My child is was on so many pharmaceuticals that my child was so utterly drugged. That did it help with the seizures? Yes, it helped with the seizures. But I lost my child. You look at my kid's eyes. What did she say here? You look at my child's eyes, and there's nothing there, barely a soul. And so her point is, she wanted us to bring this up on her show. She said, this is my perspective, my point of view, because I don't want to make any recommendations regarding your children at all, personally. Here's Josh Stanley, but this is a good point she brings up. The amount of medicines that they're giving them pharmaceutically are stoning them so bad, making them so high, the benzos and the opiates and all of these things that they're prescribing these children. And she said, I want to encourage the parents out there to please stay with it, because even though we probably have a higher rate of THC that we're giving our child, the high that child gets from THC is nowhere near what the high was when that child was on psychoactives. So, ma'am, I want to thank you for having the courage to send this in. You are, going to be kept. I'm not going to talk about names or countries, but this is an important thing I think we bring up, because I think a lot of parents and talk about the psychoactive nature of this and the high of this. And I don't know, Doc. I mean, guys, what's worse? It's a tough one. It's tough.
Well, I don't know if
I have true opinions on it, but
well, what are yours, Jen?
Well, and I've said it several times on this show, that I don't want THC to be the redheaded stepchild. I think it plays a big part in things, and I think that when you're so sick, what possibly could a little THC do? I mean, make you laugh, smile. It blows my mind. And all I can say about Vicodin is I took it one time. They gave me 10 pills. I only had to use 3, and I was popping the rest of the 7 like they were candy. And thank God I didn't have another prescription. And I'm telling you, 10 Vicodin, just extremely addictive. And as we know, I don't know. I just can't. We cannot. I just think we have this perception of cannabis as, still reefer madness and dreadlocks and tie-dye and all that stuff is fine. But I mean, all of a sudden, if your child is taking a product with THC, that's not what's going to happen. I don't know.
I don't disagree. I don't think we really know a great deal about it, and I think we need to know more. I wouldn't vilify THC or cannabis.
Vilify is a great
think
word.
That what we're seeing, and this I think it's anecdotal, because I don't really have much more in the way of information here, but we're seeing that CBD, for example, by itself is not all that people keep saying it is. So I think there's, as we said at the outset, there's a synergistic action. There's something where all of these different compounds interact with each other to produce the effects that we observe. I also want to make the point that politicians listen to their constituents. Good politicians do, here or anywhere. And Tip O'Neill was right when he said all politics is local. And I think that whoever this brave woman was, wherever she lives.
Yes, thank you.
I would suggest going and talking to your local representative, wherever, in the national parliament or the national government, wherever you are, and talk to them personally, in person, about this. Do that here in Colorado. Go talk to your congressman. They want to hear from you. Go talk to your state rep, your state senator. Go talk to, if you can, make an appointment with your U.S. senators. Talk to them. Tell them why it's important to you. Make sure they understand it. Give them information. Do this anywhere you can, because truly, it is there's a snowball effect. Politicians will listen to parents.
Yes.
They will listen to people who are concerned about their children's well-being. They will listen, in most places, unless it's an authoritarian state, will listen to people's needs. And I am really quite convinced that the majority of political figures really do want the best for their constituents, and all constituents, corporations among them. But I think that they have to know what you think. Now, if they are just blatantly opposed and they throw you out of your office, you have every right, obligation perhaps, to campaign against them and tell them so.
Right.
And make sure they're aware that if they aren't going to be responsive to your needs, or at least address them in any responsible way, your job as a citizen in a country where ostensibly votes matter, and maybe they don't, wherever someone is, but your job is to go out and become politically active and talk to your neighbors. That matters. Talk to other parents, talk to other moms, and make them aware that this politician blew you off and did not address your needs.
No, and that's such a good point. And, you know, it's great that we have the Pediatric Cannabis Therapy Group on Facebook. I mean, it is huge, and people find comfort and can talk to people about things. And it's interesting that you say talk to your local representative. So I have to admit that I've been guilty of, I've been the person that stuck my head in the sand and what I say doesn't matter. And, you know, I hate politics, but at the end of the day, through this industry, I've learned that it's just something that you have to keep abreast and talk to people and get involved. And speaking of that, we met with Diana DeGette today, which was huge. Thank you, Wanda James, for setting that up. There was about 8 women and Brian Vicente, and she took about, I want to say a lot longer than we thought, but a half an hour to 45 minutes, and listened to each of our stories, how we were in the industry, the banking problems. You know, I talked about the duvay kids, and her job basically dropped. She has no idea. You know, dosing and testing, and these kids that can go, you know, 6 days without a seizure when otherwise they had seizures every 24 hours. So
many more than that.
Yeah, I just use that as an example, and that blows me away. But so it does work, and I've personally realized that it starts with you. Everybody makes a difference. So if you can talk to your local, whoever that is, representative,
and it can be a little nerve-wracking to go in and talk to someone who you see as a authority figure, perhaps. But
But they work for you.
They do.
They do.
That's exactly it.
This is your representative. You elected them. Essentially, they came and they sat down in an interview, and you said if you voted for them, and lucky enough for them to win, you hired them through your vote.
Well, even if you didn't vote for them, they still represent.
They still represent you. That's absolutely right. But they're our employees. They're our means to the outside world. Okay.
The problem is when money buys influence, as in the Trent Lott instance. Yeah. And I hope I didn't misquote him.
No, you were right on that. You can look that up.
But that's you know, if it's the person who doesn't have any money also has a voice and also has concerns that need to be addressed, and those.
That's the majority.
It is the majority. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Look, when what is it? 400 people in the United States are worth more than the bottom 150 million people.
Wow.
That's
wow.
Look, that's success. That's capitalism. That's whatever we have. But are the voices of those 400 more important to our elected representatives than the voices of the bottom 150 million? I kind of get the impression that sometimes they are. to our politicians.
I think
money,
they are.
Money.
Yeah. So you know, this is sort of one of those wake up moments in our country's history, and probably the history of the world, I guess.
Yeah, this is a
that-
wake
There
up.
has to be a mind shift.
All right, guys, I'm really sorry. I have to cut this short. We have to call Paige here real quick.
Oh,
we
let's
just
do
have a few more minutes, and
definitely.
I want to get a report on Charlotte. So let's get Paige on the phone here, and then what I would like to do is once we have Paige on, I'm going to show a couple of videos, latest videos of Charlotte, and I want Paige to tell us a little bit about that first.
Let's clear it with Paige. Make sure that
Oh, she's good.
she's going to be okay. Cool.
I think she's fine.
All right. Good.
Hello.
Paige, how are you? This is Josh Stanley.
Hey, how you doing?
Doing
And
good.
Jen.
We got
And
Jen
Dr.
Murray here.
Shackelford.
When we got Dr. Shackelford here. Now, you know, I'm
Paige.
sorry because we don't have we're not live tonight. We're recording. It's the first time I've done it. So usually you get to kind of see and talk to us, and we can, you know what we're doing on the show. So it's going to be a little bit different tonight.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm glad everyone's there. That's great.
it is. It's great. And first off, I'd like to ask you permission real quick. Can we air a couple of the videos that you sent out last week about Charlotte laughing and talking?
Oh, of course. She's doing great. Yeah,
it's
sure.
So phenomenal.
Paige, before we air these, can you tell us a little bit about these two videos? Because what you've told me is that, you know, when people didn't know Charlotte before this CBD treatment, what you're about to see is nothing short of a miracle. Can you explain a little bit about that, Paige?
Yeah, I mean, before I didn't videotape much. She was horrible. She was 6 months of horror. And, you know, it is Duvay syndrome. It's a serious epilepsy, genetic epilepsy. But, you know, 100 grand mal seizures was an excellent week. 300 was her average, you know, worst week. So we settled in 200 for an average for 6 months of that. We really didn't think she'd survive. So she stopped walking, she stopped talking, she couldn't eat, and it was horrible to see her just slipping away. And we started the CBD, and everything started kind of coming back. At the same time, we lowered all her meds, so she went pharmaceutical free, and the CBD got to a nice level in her system. And this is what we're seeing. She's talking, she's running around. It's pretty amazing. And maybe, you know, unless you're a Duvay syndrome parent watching, I guess you probably won't fully appreciate the impact of the video. But she's just to hear her voice talking. When you have one word left, you don't know which way it's going to go. You could lose them all, or you could gain one more, or you could just stay there forever. So it's just, you just never know, and it's pretty cool to see. So we've been videotaping like crazy.
Oh, and Paige, please keep those videos coming. That I got to tell everybody before we air this, okay? And I'm going to try not to lose it. But I had a meeting, and I was a half hour late because I had to go and I had to clear my eyes up. I was heaving. So Chris,
I think we all had that reaction.
yes, we did.
That's awesome.
Chris, let's air that.
So, Paige, we're seeing. You want to describe this, John?
Is that Dusty?
Listen, she's going to say dust.
Charlie, show me.
Oh my goodness.
That is Dusty.
Paige, every time
And-
I see that, I do the same as Josh. It's astonishing to see
That's
the change.
wonderful.
Having
Well,
seen
you
her-
probably also heard in the background that dog barking that, you know, and maybe again, and only another Duvay parent would understand, but we, you know, through all of this, we got a puppy. Is just another way to put it. That's how good things went from horrible to just, well, okay, we can live our life again. And we have a Stanley puppy. Josh's mom gave us one of her dogs from her litter. But even just to take on a dog, and my husband works in the Middle East, and, you know, that's pretty telling, I think. So you can hear Billy barking in the background.
I've always felt just terrible about you having to give you guys that dog, but
And
I
that's
guess,
not a little puppy, right? They're
No, it's not a
gigantic.
little puppy.
But
That's a
isn't
Bernese
it
Mountain
interesting?
Dog.
I mean, just no one would take that on when your bags are packed to the hospital every single day, and we haven't done that since March. She's been, you know, off all drugs since March, and that's also when we gave her last emergency drug, and when things really started to pick up and improve, and that, you know, that's been 5 months. It's pretty crazy.
It's astounding.
Wow.
And absolutely mind-boggling. I'm speechless, and that's rare for me.
Folks, we're going to go to this next video. Watch this next one. This is my favorite.
Don't do it. No, yuck. Oh. No, don't do it. Don't do it.
Oh my goodness. Oh.
I want to post that on CannLabs. Can I, Paige?
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, that's. I wasn't expecting that. I should have waited till after I had all my meetings done. I mean, that laughter is just infectious.
You know, and again, I didn't hear her laugh all fall, winter, spring. I did not hear her laugh. I thought it was done. I thought you didn't think you're never going to hear it again. So that again is another. I literally did not hear it. She'd wake up in the middle of the night in her sleep and kind of laugh in her sleep just once in a while, once a month, and that's it. And I never heard her laugh. She didn't smile. It was pretty cool to hear that day. I filmed that. It's just pretty neat to hear her happy again, to see her. And just to have a life again, you don't understand. 300 seizures a week, that's just to go to the market, to go to get food. With my husband in Afghanistan, that's 8 seizures. That's 8 grand mal seizures. And, I'm weathered. I've done this for a while, but that's still no picnic. And it's, we can just go out and live our life. I've been dropping her off at child care. I've never done that in my life before, ever, in 5.5 years. And at the gym, just go to the gym. I go rock climb, and I drop her off, and it's pretty awesome. So you guys have given this to us. I still wake up, to be honest with you, every day thinking there's no way. There's no way the cannabis is covering how bad she was with no drugs. These are drugs that were killing her and she's allergic to. There's no way this, I kind of pinch myself thinking there's no way this could be covering all that, but it's been, the time will tell, and it's been this many months. It's just very interesting. I'm surprised that, I'd be surprised if more people weren't interested in starting this for their child. I just can't understand why. And people should be running to try this for their kids. There's no reason why. There's no bad side effects.
Yeah, it's kind of like you look at it all of a sudden, isn't it, Paige, and you go, this is what the big deal was all about?
Right, exactly.
Well, this is what the big deal is all about. It's
That's why we're in this.
Exactly.
It is a huge deal.
It's this. I mean, I was speaking earlier about the total cost of seizure disorders in this country, and if you look at the impact that Charlotte's disorder has had on your lives, all of you,
Right.
the entire family, and that Charlotte can go to daycare, that's an immense thing. That you
and the monetary impact on your life. She's now on a Medicaid waiver for life-limiting illness in Colorado, and we're paying for this as taxpayers. One trip to the ER and MRIs and intubation.
Yes,
we're all paying for this for all these children.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So why not get them well?
Right. And so I mean, let me just say, and this is not hyperbole, but what you're doing is the equivalent of any other advance in treatment for people with illnesses. It's it takes a tremendous amount of courage to embrace something that is an unknown, and you've done it with incredible grace and great courage, great dedication. You've always been dedicated, it's very clear, but to go to beyond that kind of traditional, especially when the neurologists say, well, that's all we've got.
Oh, right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's not courage. It's literally fear. That's exactly what our epileptologist has said. There's nothing left to try. And so, a couple other meds that were very unlikely to have an impact on her.
Yes.
I just said, let me give this a shot, let me try this. And I meet new people, and they say, well, oh, so what drugs is she on? I just met a new parent this week. And I kind of feel like a crazy person telling, oh, she's on no drugs. I think there's 2 children in the world. There's one in Europe and Charlotte who are on no pharmaceuticals with this syndrome. It's very rare. And I said, she's on nothing. We have nothing left to try. She's on cannabis. And I sound a little nuts, but you know what? I have to push. I have to help this keep going, this drug in the state, because it's working. That's my goal. We're not recreational users. We were not in this whole industry before we started our daughter on it. It was very foreign to us, and I have to, because I care, because it's working. That's the only reason why.
Paige, that's incredible, and I hate to cut you off. We've we got another show coming on here next. Georgia's coming on. I hope everybody listens. But I apologize. I want to keep you longer. I'd like to keep you for an hour if we ever have some time. I know you have a question for Dr. Shackelford, so we're going to see if we can't call you when we get out of here for just a minute. Is that okay?
Awesome. Yeah, excellent. Thanks for having me. Thanks for everything you're doing for us.
Well, absolutely. We love you guys to death. Thanks so much for coming on. And folks, that's it. That's the realm of caring. That's why we do what it is we do. We need your help. We can all do it together. That's realmofcaring.com. Please go to it. Get involved. We're going to see you here next week. Go donate. Yes, give what you can. We're going to see you next week. We got a fun show. All the brothers are going to be here. We got blooper reels, so please don't miss next week's show. It's going to be a little more lighthearted and a little bit on the crazy side. So remember, as always, guys, it takes one lighthouse to bring in 1,000 ships. Be that lighthouse. We'll see you next week.
Bye-bye, everybody.